All right, today we're jumping into something truly wild. It's called the impostor illusion, which is the perfect way to describe one of the most bizarre conditions out there, Capgras syndrome. We're going to take a journey into the brain to see what happens when the wires for recognition and emotion get tangled up, and the result is, well, it's almost unbelievable. Let's get into it.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. You're looking at someone you love, your spouse, your parent, your child. You see their face, you recognize every single line, every feature, you know that's them. But you feel nothing, zero. Instead, there's just this cold, deep certainty that the person in front of you is a fake, an identical and probably dangerous duplicate. That's the world someone with Capgras is living in every single day.
So what is it, officially? Well, Capgras syndrome is exactly that, a powerful, delusional belief. And there are two key parts to this. One, the person looks like a perfect physical match, an exact copy. And two, this copy is seen as someone else entirely on the inside, usually someone with bad intentions. It's this complete and total disconnect between what your eyes are seeing and what your heart is supposed to be feeling.
So let's step inside their shoes for a minute. To really get the science behind this, we first have to wrap our heads around the patient's truly bizarre and frankly terrifying reality. Okay, so what does this look like day to day? Well, the patient doesn't just think their loved one is acting a bit weird. No, they are absolutely convinced it's a different person, a perfect imposter who looks right but feels wrong, and usually sinister. And this delusion almost always zeroes in on the people with the tightest emotional bonds, family. But maybe the strangest part of all, when you ask them where the real person went, they're often just vague, even unconcerned. It's like the real person just poofed out of existence and they're okay with it. This isn't some fleeting thought, you guys. This is a deeply held, rock-solid belief.
Our understanding of this has come a long way. It was first written about back in 1923 by a psychiatrist named Joseph Capgras, and for decades, everyone thought it was purely a psychiatric problem. But then, in the 60s and 70s, doctors started seeing it in patients with brain injuries and other neurological issues. That was a huge turning point. And then came the 90s, when neuropsychology dropped a brand new model that changed the whole game, shifting the focus from the abstract mind to the physical wiring of the brain.
To really crack this medical mystery, we first got to figure out what we are not dealing with, because this is where the clues really start to line up.
So this is absolutely crucial. This is not a problem with your eyes or your memory. The patient isn't hallucinating. That person is really standing there. It's not a visual illusion. They see the face perfectly clearly. And it's not amnesia. They remember exactly what their loved one is supposed to look like. The problem is something much deeper. It's a total breakdown in how we identify people.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the matter. Just compare Capgras to face blindness or prosopagnosia. With face blindness, a person can't consciously recognize a face, but, and this is amazing, studies show they still get that gut feeling of familiarity. Their body knows, even if their mind doesn't. Capgras is the perfect mirror image. The patient consciously recognizes the face, yep, that's my husband, but that gut feeling, that warm glow of familiarity, it's gone. Just a chilling, empty space where a feeling ought to be.
So, this bizarre disconnect sent researchers on a major hunt for the cause, a journey that took them from old-school psychological theories right into the physical brain itself. Back in the days, the explanations were all psychological. Some figured the delusion was just a way to explain away a powerful feeling of strangeness. Others thought it was a way to deal with really complicated feelings of love and hate for someone. I mean, think about it. If you create an evil twin, you can dump all your negative feelings onto them and keep the good version pure. These theories were trying to explain the story of the delusion. But the evidence kept pointing to something physical. Sure, you see Capgras in conditions like schizophrenia, but a huge chunk of cases, maybe a quarter to a third, are tied to concrete organic problems. We're talking dementia, stroke, head injuries, even things like thyroid disorders. With so many different physical triggers, it started to look less like a software bug and a lot more like a hardware problem.
And then they brought out the big guns, brain scans. And that's when a real pattern started to emerge. A lot of Capgras patients had damage or abnormalities in the right hemisphere of their brain, which just so happens to be a hub for processing faces and emotion. The search was definitely getting warmer. They were starting to zero in on a location.
All of this evidence leads us straight to the modern breakthrough, a model based on two different pathways in the brain that honestly just finally makes it all make sense. So here's the leading theory, and it's actually pretty elegant. Recognizing a face isn't just one single action. It's more like a process that runs on two parallel tracks at the same time, and each track has a totally different job.
This model suggests that Capgras is exactly what we touched on earlier, the mirror image of face blindness. In both conditions, one of these two super important pathways is broken. For face blindness, it's the conscious recognition path that's out of commission. But for Capgras, it's the other one, the emotional pathway. That's the wire that's been cut.
Okay, let's really break this down. When you see a face, pathway number 1, let's call it the what pathway, kicks in. It's the analytical part. It's like a detective checking off a list. Okay, same eyes, same nose. Yep, that looks exactly like my wife. In Capgras, this pathway is working perfectly. But at the exact same time, pathway number 2, the feeling pathway, is supposed to send that signal to your limbic system, the emotional center of your brain. That's what gives you the warm fuzzies, that feeling of knowing. In Capgras, that connection is broken. So what happens? The brain gets a signal saying, that's her. But the emotional confirmation comes back with nothing. Just static. Silence.
So what does a brain do when it's faced with an impossible contradiction like that? Well, it tells itself a story. A very logical, but completely wrong story.
This quote here from the research really just nails it. The delusion, that's not the actual problem. It's a symptom of the problem. It's the brain's best attempt to come up with an explanation for a perceptual signal that has gone completely dead.
Let's try to walk through the brain's internal monologue for a second. This logical process that leads to such an illogical, heartbreaking place.
Okay, step 1 is just perception. The what pathway works just fine. The brain looks at the visual information and states a simple fact. This person looks exactly like my father. Check.
But then comes the big contradiction. The brain checks in with the feeling pathway, expecting that rush of warmth and familiarity. But instead, it gets nothing. Just a cold, alien feeling of strangeness. The emotional signature is just missing.
So now, the rational part of the brain has a massive puzzle to solve. It has two competing facts. Fact A, he looks like Dad. Fact B, he feels like a total stranger. Since both things can't be true of the real Dad, the brain comes to a logical conclusion. If he doesn't feel like my father, then he cannot be my father. Therefore, this must be an impostor.
And that's the final piece. The Capgras delusion isn't madness. It's the brain's desperate attempt at sense-making. It's a story, a narrative, that it creates to explain an experience that otherwise makes no sense at all. It is, in a very real way, the brain's logical lie.
And this whole thing leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. The feeling of truly knowing someone isn't just about recognizing their face. It's this fragile, delicate dance between what we see and what we feel. And if one little broken wire in the brain can turn a beloved family member into a frightening stranger, it really forces you to ask, doesn't it? How much of our own reality is built not just on what we perceive, but on the stories our brains decide to tell us about it?